Welcome to my channel Purnima. Please subscribe my channel. Gestalt's theory of learning. Inside Gestalt theory. The Gestalt theorists were the first group of psychologists to systematically study perceptual organization around 1920s in Germany. They were John Wolfgang von Goethe, Ernst Mach, and particularly of Christian Orn Ehrenfels, and the research work of Max Wertheimer, Wolfgang Kohler, Kurt Kofka, and Kurt Lewin. According to the Gestalt psychologist, certain features in the visual perception are universal. Gestalt is a sensual theory. What we see is a result of light and dark objects, edges and counters that we form into whole image. According to Gestalt psychology, the whole is different from than the sum of its parts. Dissatisfied with the behaviorist approach of learning, the psychologists tried to see learning as a more deliberate and conscious effort of individual rather than mere product of habit formation or machine-like stimulus-response connection. According to them, learner does not mean merely respond to a stimulus, but mentally process what he receives or perceives. Thus, learning is a purposive, explorative, creative activity instead of trial and error. Things cannot be understood by study of its constituent parts only, but actually it is understood only by perceiving it as a totality or whole. Gestalt theory focused on mind's perceptive. The word gestalt has no direct translation in English, but refers to a way a thing has been gestalt, that is placed or put together. Common translation include form and shape. Gaetano Kanisga refers to it as organized structure. Gestalt theorists followed the basic principle that the whole is greater than sum of its parts. In other words, the whole carried different and altogether greater meaning than its individual components. For example, paint, canvas, brush are the parts of a whole, a picture. A car is a whole, its parts are entire tire, paint, and metal, respectively. In viewing the whole, a cognitive process takes place. The mind makes a leap from understanding the parts to realize the whole. Gestalt is theory that brain operates holistically with self-organizing tendencies. The statement whole is different from some of its parts. Sum up the way we organize figures and whole forms instead of just collection of simple ones, curves, shapes. Describing a tree. Its parts are trunk, branches, leaves, perhaps blossoms or fruit. But when you look at the entire tree, you are not conscious of the parts. You are aware of overall object. The tree parts are of secondary importance, even though they can be clearly trunk, branches, leaves, fruit, whole mango tree. The perspective changes here. Experiments. Much of the scientific knowledge concerning learning derives from work on animal behavior that was conducted by 20th century German Gestalt psychologist Wolfgang Kohler. Kohler conducted many experiments with his chimpanzee Sultan at the island of Tenerife in Africa to describe the term insight. These experiments are illustration of learning by insight. Kohler's experiment on chimpanzee. Experiment 1. Chimpanzee Sultan inside a cage or a box. Chimpanzee jumped to reach the banana, which was hang from the roof of the cage. Not succeeded. Used the box as a jumping platform by placing it just below the hanging banana. Got success. Experiment 2. Chimpanzee inside a cage or 2 or 3 boxes required. To reach banana, specific arrangement of the box were required. Experiment 3. Chimpanzee inside the cage, 2 sticks, one longer than the other, were placed inside the cage. Chimpanzee took one after another stick and picked banana, not succeed as banana was placed outside the cage. One stick has a hollow end so that other stick could thrust into it from longer stick. Suddenly he joined 2 sticks together and reached the banana. Experiment demonstrate role of intelligence and cognitive abilities in higher learning, problem solving. The insight learning. This was observed in the experiment of the Wolfgang Kohler involving chimpanzees. Kohler found that chimpanzees could use insight learning instead of the trial and error to solve problems. Learning by conditioning is common to all animals and human beings and useful for early education. But learning by insight is suitable only for intelligent creatures, both human and animals, and useful for higher learning. It is kind of learning done by observation, by perceiving the relationship and understanding the situation. When an individual or intelligent animal faces a problem, he thinks and looks over whole situation and tries to find out solution. He tries to get some clues in the way he could proceed to solve the problem, the method he should pursue, and a general awareness of the results of his actions. Then suddenly he arrives at the solution through his mental exercises. But for this, the total view of the situation should be exposed to the individual who must feel urgency of the problem and its solution. Insightful learning is also known as Gestalt learning, which means that learning is concerned with the whole individual or arises from the interaction of an individual with his situations or environment. Through this interaction emerge new form of perception, imagination, and ideas which altogether constitute insight. Steps in insight learning. Identification of the problem. The learner identify the presence of the block as an intervening obstacles on his way to the goal. Analysis of the problem situation. Learner observe the problematic situation, analyze the different components in the problematic situation, and perceive the relation between goal and the block. Establishing mental association in between similar previously acquired ideas. After analyzing the total situation, he selects probable solutions in conclusions by means of hesitation, pause, concentration, attention, etc. The trial of mode of response. Learner makes initial efforts in the form of the simple trial and error mechanism. Sustained attention. Learner maintains frequently recurrent attention to the goal and motivation. Establishing cause-effect relationship. In certain moment, there is a sudden perception of relationship in total situation and organism directly performs the required acts. It is the insight development. Steady repetition of the adaptive behavior. After getting an insightful solution, individual tries to implement it in another situation. Gestalt laws. Law of similarity, law of prognosis, law of proximity, law of continuity, law of closure, law of common region. Law of similarity. The law of similarity states that similar things tend to appear grouped together. Grouping can occur in both visual and auditory stimuli. In the image, you probably see 2 separate groupings. of colored circles as rows rather than just a collection of the dots. Law of good figure or law of pregnance. Law of pregnance is sometimes referred to as law of good figure or law of simplicity. This law holds that when you are presented with a set of ambiguous or complex objects, your brain will make them appear as simple as possible. For example, when presented with Olympic logo, you see overlapping circles rather than an assortment of curved connected lines. Law of proximity. According to the law of proximity, things that are close together seem more related than things that are spaced farther apart. In the image at the top of the page, the circles on the left appear to be part of one grouping, while those on the right appear to be part of the another. Because the objects are close to each other, we group them together. Law of continuity. The law of continuity holds that points that are connected by straight and curved lines, as are seen in the way that follows the smoothest path. In other words, elements in a line or curve seem more related to one another than those positioned randomly. Law of closure. According to the law of closure, we perceive elements as belonging to same group if they seem to complete some entity. Our brains often ignore contradictory information or fill in the gaps in the information. In the image, you probably see the shape of diamond because your brain fills the missing gaps in order to create mini image. Law of common region. Gestalt law of common region says that when elements are located in the same closed region, we perceive them as belonging to the same group. Look at the last image at the top of the page. The circles are right next to each other so that dot at the end of one circle is actually closer to the dot at the other end of the neighbor circle. But despite those two dots are close, we see the dots inside the circle are as belonging together. End of this discussion. Thank you. Please subscribe my channel Purnima.